Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Sunflower Sutras. I am your host, Tara. To start things off, I would like to do a quick as possible reading of the Canadian poet James McIntyre's famous Ode to the Mammoth Cheese. We have seen the Queen of Cheese laying quietly at your ease, gently fanned by evening breeze. Thy fair form no flies dare seize. All gaily dressed you'll soon go to the great provincial show, to be admired by many a beau in the city of Toronto. Cows numerous as a swarm of bees, or as the leaves upon the trees, it did require to make thee please, and stand unravelled Queen of Cheese. May you not receive a scar, as we have heard that Mr. Harris intends to send you off as far as the great world's show at Paris. Of the youth beware of these, for some of them might rudely squeeze and bite your cheek, then songs or glees we could not sing, O Queen of Cheese. Wert thou suspended from a balloon, you'd cast a shade, even at noon. Folks would think it was the moon, about to fall and crush them soon. You might be wondering what exactly that was. That is quite possibly the most famous example of bad poetry in recorded human history. One of my favorite poems that even after several years I still can't perform without breaking out at some point, and is also my very clever segue for today's topic. Today, I am going to be discussing bad writing with a very, very special guest, the person that actually makes this show work, who we have not heard speak before.
Hello, I'm Ryan Thompson. Most of you probably know who I am, I'm assuming. But yes, I am the editor of this show. I have not been on it until now.
I needed him for this. Obviously, there's the big debate about objective versus subjective when it comes to what makes art bad, what constitutes bad writing. But there's so much fun to be had in bad writing. And that's what we're aiming for today is, it's not just going to be like an academic discussion of how to be a good writer, because that's not at all what I'm worried about, because I don't even know how to do that. But we can...
I mean, who does?
No one does. But we can surely share some of our favorite examples and at least hope that, a message could get across, and if we don't even have to worry about that, really, it's just fun to just find really bad examples and be like, oh my god. It doesn't even make me feel better as a writer. It's just so funny.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's really not a sense of superiority that comes into it. There's just something about it that's fun.
Like the poem I just read. He was a poet that was around at the late 19th century, and he's notorious now. He is famous and will have his Wikipedia entry until the end of time because he's a bad writer, which is horrible and horrifying and mortifying and all this other, if he was around, he'd be really upset that that's how people remember him. But you look at his career, and this McIntyre fella, almost all of his poems revolved around cheese. And that's the kind of dedication that I wish I had in my writing career. You can't really make fun of him. He's honestly just really admirable for that feature. Several poems. He is known as the cheese poet.
I mean, I'd be okay with being known as the cheese poet.
Yes. I obviously, being me, I did research for this episode to give a historical perspective of examples of bad writing in the field of poetry, because it always seems like whenever the discussion of bad writing comes up, it's about traditional prose writing or people just wanting to poo-poo on fan fictions, which is, a very cheap target. So I wanted to talk about bad poetry specifically. And it's interesting how so many people that historically have been considered bad poets have this common thread of being really attracted to, of all things, high death tolls. Most of the poets, like the very end line of that poem referring to the possibility of people being squished by the giant cheese. Yeah, I found several other examples of famous poets, famous bad poets. There was a woman around the same era named Julia Moore, and almost all of her poetry revolved around headlines of, like, horrific things that had happened, and just, like, rhyming the number of people who died with, like, the manner in which they died, and I just... I mean, as a former edgy teenager, it's like, I respect that, but the best example of Julia's poetry, which at first I was considering maybe people were being unfairly critical of her because she was a woman. And very quickly I decided that that was not the case at all. One of her more famous poems was a poem about the temperance movement and about how you shouldn't drink and drinking is bad for your soul.
Okay.
Yes. And it's bad. Here's the thing about Julia's writing is that why she became famous was that she could not carry an actual rhythm or cadence to her poetry. So it's just, many a man joined the club that never drank a drachm. Those noble men were kind and brave, they care not for the slang they meet on every side. You're a reformed drunkard too. You've joined the Red Robin Brigade among the drunken crew.
Okay.
There's more. She has one about the Great Chicago Fire, which is the one I was talking about, where she's, like, rhyming the death toll with the way they died and talking about how, like, you can hear the screams and the flames. And that's what I love. So many other classical poets, like, they'll go dark, but they don't go that, like, gruesome. I can't imagine why people wouldn't like it. And then there's this guy that I found, and his is almost scary because he focused, like, on one town for almost all of his poetry. His name was William Topaz McGonagall, which is a great name.
That can't be his real name.
That's his honest name. Also from basically the same era as the other two, which I don't know what happened for people that were born in the 1820s. Like, was there just, like, a meteor or something that just, like, whoosh, bad writing? But, like, he was a Scottish man born in Ireland, and almost all of his poetry involved this place called Tay. So he has a poem about this whale that washed up at the Tay Bay, and he has this poem about the Tay Bridge disaster, which he didn't even get the death toll right at, but he needed the number to rhyme.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that was the funny part for me, was...
That's something.
In the poem, he references that 90 people died, and the actual death toll was 75, but it wouldn't fit the cadence.
Right.
I don't know if I respect that or not.
Could you just imagine, like, just a whole bunch of poets, like, born in 1998 doing this exact same thing, but just dozens and dozens and dozens of poems about 9/11?
Oh my god.
And just everyone using their own number for the number of people that died just to fit whatever rhyme scheme they're doing.
See, that's the fascinating thing that I think, historian perspective aside, academic interest put away, reading these poems from these people that were really inspired by really morbid things and writing really crass, unemotional presentation pieces where they're just kind of making a pretty sound out of a headline that they, like, read. It's so unattached to what happened, even though it might have happened at the town that they're from, or it might have involved people that they knew. Almost all of these poets, when they were tackling these, like, horrible things, it's not at all connected. There's not really any empathy or sorrow or grief or anything like that. It's so emotional. And things that I've read in a modern perspective that are about horrible events, like every time, you know, a mass shooting happens, a lot of especially spoken word poets have pieces about it, because it's just the, you know, the growing amount of these tragedies. And of course, their political reasoning behind them. A lot of people come up with these really wonderful pieces that are either, you know, incredibly pessimistic or incredibly hopeful, and they're charged either way. And that's what I'm getting at, is pieces that I've heard in the modern perspective are very emotionally charged. There's a lot of grief and anguish and anger, and, like, even people that are, like, being overtly hopeful and just, like, let this make us stronger, hopes and prayers type stuff. And then there's this, where it's just like, 94 people died on that great evening day. And so I sat there and I sighed and gave a great sway, and it's like, oh my god! It's so hard to, like, it's so easy to fall into the trap of people were just more brutal back in the old days. And as a historian, you fight that, and you're like, no, people have always been empathetic, people have always been sensitive, it's just that we're getting more of a globalist perspective, and all these cultures are mixing together, and we're getting all these different perspectives, and then you read things like this, and you're like, damn it!
My wife died. She was smothered in felt. I sat on my porch and thought to myself, well...
I knew you were going to end it with whelp. Okay, so here's the thing. My history lesson aside, you had planned for this episode something really fun.
Yes, we want to get into that now.
Yes.
Okay, so my contribution to this episode is I found some examples of bad writing that I thought would be fun to read, but to actually keep it interesting, some of these I wrote, and Tara is going to have to decide which ones I wrote. Now, going back to what we were talking about earlier about, you know, cheap shots and things like that, to my knowledge, all of these examples have been published traditionally, so we're not just, you know, picking on hobbyists. These are people who do not care what we think and are probably not going to be discouraged by us using their writing as examples of bad.
A quick aside, Ryan is a really great writer, so I am terrified.
Well, thank you.
I'm terrified because I know that you're going to be able to chameleon your skills, and I'm not going to be able to tell which one at all was the one that you made up.
We'll see. So I have two categories. I'll let you decide which one we do first. The first category is similes, or bad analogies, and the second category is male writers.
Ooh.
Which we want to get out of the way first.
Ooh, I am a very classic supper then dessert person, so let's do the similes first.
Alright. Kids jonesing for lunch and already halfway out of their seats sank back down again, their butts reconnecting with their chairs like magnets, snapping together. That's one.
Oh my god.
Number 2. He wandered aimlessly off the back porch, the damp clothing of the morning laundry swayed like fuzzy leather on the clothesline in his backyard. Number 3. Since being inside the house of horrors, more and more images had been popping in and out of her head like Mexican jumping beans.
Oh my god.
And finally, number 4. We hump snail-like to our end, leaving in our wake no trace of having been here.
There is no way, as a person who was born in the 90s, you would ever use the term jonesing in reference to food. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that one's definitely not you. Oh my goodness.
Let me know if you want to hear any of them again.
Oh, I'm going to have to because my brain's kind of blown away. Can I hear the second one again?
He wandered aimlessly off the back porch, the damp clothing of the morning's laundry swayed like fuzzy leather on the clothesline in his backyard.
Not everyone is aware of this about you, but for those who don't know, Ryan is a gifted DM, a dungeon master for the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, and whenever he's trying to create a very comical scene, he just nails it out of the park. And there's just something about this particular line that reminds me of some of your goofier character introductions. Please tell me this is you.
Yes.
Oh!
So I decided for this one to go with the really terrible pun of suede like leather.
Yes, that's why I thought it was you, the wordplay. See, that's the thing. That's the thing I love about bad writing.
I thought that one might give me away, but I thought it was worth it.
It is.
To try to sneak it in there.
That's what I love about, like, bad writing. And, like, I think one of my favorite pieces of artistic advice is just create and actually strive to maybe make something bad, or at the very least, don't even worry if you're making garbage. Because some of the bravest examples of things like wordplay that I've ever come up with or just heard was coming from people that were totally just, like, spinning a yarn, not giving any care to what they were saying, and being just completely removed from self-consciousness. Wordplay, when you're not afraid of bad writing, is so much braver.
Okay, do you want to know what the others were from?
Yes.
Okay, so the kids jonesing for lunch, their butts reconnecting with their chairs like magnets snapping together. That is from Nevermore by Kelly Cray. I had not heard of this novel, but apparently I think this one was a top... two of these I think are top sellers on Amazon. The other one, The Mexican Jumping Beans, is Abducted by T.R. Reagan. Did pretty well on Amazon. And the trick one, the We Hump Snail Like to Our End, leaving in our wake no trace of having been here, which there are so many things wrong with that one, by the way.
So many.
That one was kind of a trick. I found it on Quillmag, which is a journalism magazine, and they listed it as an example of a illogical analogy. Yes.
Incredibly. By the way, for our listeners at home, Ryan has all of this written down in this gorgeous journal he got for Christmas from a dear friend of ours. It's a beautiful leather-bound journal that has like a Tolkien-esque mountain range on the front of it. So all of this is scribbled in this gorgeous journal with this beautiful red ribbon bookmark.
Okay, so the next one, male writers. To my knowledge...
Wait, before we get into it, we need to specify what we mean by male writers.
Okay, yes. So, hashtag male writers. I don't know if it actually started out as a hashtag, but male writers is a term used in writing circles, particularly on the internet, to describe a particular way that a lot of male writers write female characters and write about female characters.
Most notably from their own perspective as, like, female characters thinking about themselves as women. Because we always are thinking about ourselves constantly as, I as a woman.
Yes, which I'm not doing it specifically that way, because I couldn't find enough good examples that were sincere, unfortunately. Most of the good examples I could find of that were people who were making fun of that phenomenon. So yes, these are all just absurd or strange ways that male writers have described women's bodies. So, are we ready to get into this?
I am terrified. Let's get on.
Alright. Her breasts, the sweep of a flank, defined the functional elegance of a warplane's fuselage.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
2. Her breasts were like pillows of dough, and her ass was like a mold of gelatin, wiggling with each step.
Are they hungry or horny?
3. Her precarious hips rolled like waves towards the bed. Even from behind, I could make out the silhouette of healthy breasts peeking from the sides of her torso. And finally, 4. One breast is smaller than the other, like junior and senior. Her pelvic bones are not well covered. She is a little gaunt there, but her body looks gentle and pretty.
Oh, dear God. I can already tell you put a lot of effort into creating this one. Maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I really hope that the healthy breast is you.
Yeah.
Oh! 2 for 2! Ooh!
I didn't disguise these as well as I thought. I thought going the ultra clinical with healthy would,
See, this game went from trying to trick Tara to a testament of our friendship, of how well I know your writing. Oh my god. A fuselage?
Okay, her breasts, the sweep of a flank defined with the functional elegance of a warplane's fuselage. That is from one of the quintessential cyberpunk novels, Neuromancer, by William Gibson.
Is he no shame on him. Is he attracted to robots?
I do not know much about his
Is he actually attracted
life.
to aircraft?
The pillows of dough and mold of gelatin
Oh my god.
were from If You See Me, Don't Say Hi by Neil Patel.
Really quick, I think that's probably one of the biggest, for anyone who's actually trying to learn something from this episode, number 1, God bless you. Number 2, don't. And number 3, don't compare people's bodies. It's not just women. Don't compare romantic, I want to have intercourse with this person. The best way to get shut down on if you're writing prose or poetry or whatever is comparing any body part that you want, on a person who you want to have intercourse with. Comparing them to food is inherently disturbing and just very bad writing because it's cheap and has such psychologically implicit undertones of actual mental disturbance that the more you think about it, the more it's just Jeffrey Dahmer territory. Just don't. Don't. Unless you actually want to eat people, and then I can't really, dictate that you shouldn't do that.
And then and Junior and Senior is from Henderson and the Rain King by Saul Bellow.
That one was cute. I do like that one.
So I'm curious, if I hadn't used the word healthy, do you think you still would have gotten that one?
Can you reread the whole thing?
Her precarious hips rolled like waves towards the bed. Even from behind, I could make out the silhouette of her breasts peeking from the sides of her torso.
Yeah, because it's... Everything else, aside from the imagery, is very well written, but also the term precarious, and also and here's the thing that's.
Man, I thought that one was gonna throw you up.
No.
Because I misused the word precarious.
Yeah, I know. I think that's what got me. No, here's a bit of advice from me. Not just writing wise, this is also a drawing thing, because for those of you who don't know, I like to draw. I don't consider myself a good drawer at all.
She is.
Shut up. I have been drawing for most of my life. I got it from my grandmother, and for most of my life, I have been fighting with my brother, who is also a drawer, and he is terrible at drawing women. Absolute, 2 cantaloupes on a pencil with 2 more cantaloupes type drawing of women's bodies. If a woman is being profiled like a drawing of a woman, and also consider this if you're writing about a woman, if you're seeing her from behind, you are not going to see her breasts from the sides unless they're being taped away from her chest, they're actually being pushed aside and held apart. You're not going to see the breasts just sticking out from the sides. Unless she's also, for some reason, like holding up her arms like she's about to spook a small child. You're just not gonna see the breasts from behind. I know it's sad that you can't see breasts and ass at the same time unless she's in some kind of pornographic position. But that's just how that works. You're not going to have perfect breast view with perfect ass view unless she's a pretzel. So don't write scenes where, like, oh, I can see precariously the sides of her breasts with her firm butt. And don't draw pictures where you can, like, totally get that, like, unless she's tilted to the side, like, unless she's actually angled in such a manner. If you're seeing her perfect back straight forward, you're not going to see boobs, no matter how big they are. Unless she has emaciated arms. Which I've definitely seen those drawings. I have definitely seen drawings where all of the body fat was in the breasts.
Yeah.
Don't write like that, and don't draw like that. Oh my god. Technomancer. Neuromancer.
Technomancer is a book that is being released by my friend Alex Houndshill.
Oh god, I'm so sorry. This is why you can't actually take any advice from me. My brain doesn't work. Neuromancer is a hugely prolific novel. It's hugely influential to many people, readers and writers.
The sex scenes are horrible.
Yes. It's such an important book for cyberpunk.
Really funny.
And it's...
No, because actually I went into it like, okay, this is a super important book for cyberpunk. This is really, like, influential. And I was reading it the first time I got to a sex scene. I was just like, is this a joke?
Is it?
I don't think so.
Oh, no.
If I'm being charitable, maybe he's deliberately trying to make it as clinical as possible to, like, make some point about, like, people losing their humanity in, like, modern society, or I don't know, but...
Fuselage.
Yeah, I mean, that's being charitable. I don't know if there's much, I don't know if I can defend the warplane's fuselage.
Oh my god. But, obviously, we're going on and on about bad writing stuff, and we said earlier we weren't going to attack fan fiction, but I do want to talk about one fan fiction in particular, because it is an example of such bad writing that it has become so hugely influential. So I guess if you're just after fame and maybe fortune, I mean, does anyone make money from writing? Good or bad?
Well, a few do, but...
You're familiar with the fanfic My Immortal, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How should we describe it to our wonderful listeners?
I don't know where to begin.
Harry Potter, Twilight, Hot Topic, My Chemical Romance?
I think she references Good Charlotte a little bit more, but yeah, definitely My Chemical Romance.
That's
there a lot too.
Yeah, that's right. Good
Charlotte. Mostly My Chemical Romance and Good Charlotte.
What's his name? Jacoby?
Yeah.
Or Geordie or whatever from Good Charlotte, like, is actually one of the love interests or something. This is another thing to be wary of with, like, bad writing, is that if you get really immature writing, like you sometimes will see in fan fiction, you'll be so focused on the scenery and not actually focused on the actual scene that you will describe every single thing that your character is wearing, but then forget that your character has to do things like what happens time and time and time and time again in My Immortal. I don't remember the main character's name. If you could, would you please look it up? Because I need to share it.
It is Ebony Darkness, with an apostrophe, Dementia Ravenway.
I love it so much. I am definitely influenced by that kind of naming convention for some of my D&D characters. But no, it's just the constant overdrive to talk about how her hair is dyed in this scene and she has this choker with spikes on it and it has a little Hello Kitty heart and it's got the fingerless gloves and the fishnet sleeves and all of this paragraph after paragraph description of what she's wearing.
It's
and then
literally an entire Hot Topic catalog.
An entire Hot Topic catalog.
The whole store, just all at once.
From 2009. I love the conspiracies behind this fanfic because people insinuate that it's actually created by a well-respected fanfic writer who went out of their way to create something bad. Which, the gratuitous amount of lack of anything happening, coupled with the amount of character, like, physical description. Like, you know how Malfoy has his hair parted with his emo fringe in every single scene that he appears in, but you don't know where he is at any point. You just know he's there, and she's going to have sex with him, and then have sex with Harry, and then go back to Malfoy, and then they have sex. But yeah, like, that amount of effort, I am personally very hopeful that it was a person who is a very good writer. Because there's also scenes where it gets way too introspective from the writer, because it's written like many classic fanfics were in that era, from the DeviantArt, Tumblr, what other, like,
fanfiction.com.
Fanfiction.com. I am a baby. I don't know. LiveJournal. That's another one that I never remember.
I can't remember if LiveJournal was there, if My Immortal was started when LiveJournal was still popular. I'd have to look. I don't actually remember when My Immortal was first written.
I think it was like 2009.
2009?
Because it was like right at the peak of Twilight.
Okay.
But it was also right before Harry Potter had finished.
Right.
So it had to be that timeline. So it was posted chapter by chapter for people who don't know how fanfic publishing typically works. And there are certain chapters that are just her as an author talking about how bad her school day was, and then she, like, totally breaks the fourth wall just to talk about how much she hates this one girl in her algebra class, and then goes back to her story where her character happens to kill a girl named after coincidentally the same name as the girl in the algebra. Like, it's just too...
It's too perfect.
It's too perfect. It's just too much to just be that bad of writing. I guess what I'm trying to say is if it actually was an example of actual bad writing by a bad writer, by a writer who didn't know what they were doing, I guarantee you this writer is, like, really good now because they're just too entertaining. That's the biggest thing. Bad writing, I hope what we're getting across is that it's just, bad writing can be so entertaining. And it's not even necessarily laughing at the writer. Like, I love The Room, but I would never just laugh at Tommy Wiseau's face. So good. That's bad screenwriting.
Actually incredible.
It's so bad it transcends.
Well, it's not even just like it's so bad, but it's bad in such a specific and peculiar way.
I think the only, like, actual examples of bad writing that make me kind of think less about the actual writer are when they are genuinely offensive things, like Jello butt.
Really, the worst thing any writer or any artist can be is boring.
Yeah. I think I'd much rather risk having totally ignorant, stupid, just no one gets it and everyone's confused pieces, as opposed to just like, this sounds like everything else I've ever done. We should have had Alex on this episode.
That would have been
great. And with all of that said, I'm very glad that I destroyed everything I wrote in high school. And now enough of bad writing. Let us get to good writing with this episode's listener submission. This submission is brought to us by John Sibley Williams. John is the author of As One Fire Consumes Another, the Orison Poetry Prize winner of 2019, Skin Memory, the winner of the Backwaters Prize in 2019, Disinheritance, and Controlled Hallucinations. An 11-time Pushcart nominee, John is the winner of numerous awards. He serves as editor of the Inflectionist Review and works as a literary agent. Previous publishing credits include the Yale Review, Midwest Quarterly, Sycamore Review, Prairie Schooner, the Massachusetts Review, Poet Lore, Saranac Review, Atlanta Review, Tri-Quarterly, Columbia Poetry Review, Mid-American Review, Poetry Northwest, Third Coast, and various anthologies. He lives in Portland, Oregon. The Crossing. Tell me what not to do with heaven-faced children torn between parents who are torn apart by a river tearing a muddy scar into this long and lengthening landscape. Then tell me again why we are the only animal bound by maps, shifting allegiances. Tell me what not to forgive of stars, what skin my skin is forbidden from touching, what heart my heart cannot possibly hold without breaking. Don't tell me the best way to break a body without damaging the shell. We all know how the story ends. Ask the bridled horses. Ask mothers waiting by docks for warships never to return. Ask any long, cold winter night in any part of any country any child has ever fled to find herself no closer to home. Please tell me what road that begins in ruin ends somewhere beautiful. Piñata. Body broken into, all the sweetness torn out. Brightly dyed paper flakes linger in the grass as if someone has sanded down the sun. The husk of an animal hangs loosely from a sky clouding over in storm. Tomorrow he will be a man. Until then, sticks are just sticks. Thrashing the insides out of some martyred beast is play. Lollipop. Marzipan. Tamarind. Fire works its way up the arm into bottle rocket into bang. The sky glimmers and is gone, and whatever the children can carry home in their teeth will be theirs. Dear Jonah, if you can imagine each rib a bow, sawing some music from the hollow gut of a violin, then surely the dead whale here rotting away in the sand can be called rousing. Harmonic. In a way, beautiful. Let's say the boys fighting with our dogs for viscera to smear all over the fresh white shirts of girls they love are our saviors. Grace lights, hand-me-down army boots filled with blood, their names divided by the hearts tattooed into trees. Imagine the knife work it takes to rend bone from bone. I find it difficult to imagine what we do to each other during times of peace. An arena fills with refugees a few miles inland. Power lines sag from the heft of homebound calls. Without shrapnel, your father's chest would simply be another unplayed instrument. Let's say we are playing our hearts out, innocent again, with the wide open belly of a whale calling us. Finally, a death you can almost call song. And lastly, small treasons. Somewhere it isn't night, and a body moves across another without harm, as if taking a knife to the sky, and we can answer when a child asks where the world goes when our eyes close. Somewhere we are sorry, I assume for our silences. Bones ache and char and must burn, somewhere surely a skin. Even our ghosts have left us. There must be a place where our hands aren't cages, and cages aren't gestures well-intentioned but failing. Where we love with more than body and hurt and know when we have hurt. Somewhere, a less flammable history, at least where the sparks fly upward before falling back to ash. Thank you very much, John. Those were very lovely words. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can support us by liking us on Facebook or donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/sunflowersutras. We'd like to give a special thanks to our patrons, Poet Jen Harris, E. Campson, and Heather Aranda, for helping us keep this show running. If you or someone you know has some poetry that they would like to submit to the show, feel free to submit to us either via our Facebook, or you can submit the pieces directly to me at tara.bartley@yahoo.com. So long, gefol, and farewell.